Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Worldwide Wisdom. We are learning today Chassidus about Hanukkah because Hanukkah is so much more than meets the eye. Hanukkah is so much more than just a Jewish response to a different holiday of another faith. Hanukkah is deep, Hanukkah is real, and Hanukkah is ongoing. The way that we understand the depth of Hanukkah is by diving into the words with which Hanukkah is taught to us in the Torah. Now remember, the Torah is not just merely a reference book. The Torah is not just really merely a book of instruction. It is a life guide. This is the words of God Almighty, and therefore no letter is redundant, no word is unnecessary. When a descriptive term is used to describe an instruction, it is deliberate, it is precise, and it needs to be unloaded, decoded, unpacked by us, which is what we do in the teachings of Chassidus. Specifically, when it comes to the mitzvah of Hanukkah, the Mishnah, the oral Torah, remember what's the Mishnah? The oral Torah is that which is the Torah that was taught to Moses on Mount Sinai, right? There was the Torah that was given in a written form to Moses, which is called the written Torah. The 5 books of Moses, and the 24 books of the Tanakh. Then there's also the oral Torah. The oral Torah is the Mishnah, the Gemara, the commentary on the Torah. This is not an invention of the rabbis. This is something which the rabbis revealed slowly over the generations, but it was given to God from God to Moses on Mount Sinai. So it's the same Sinaitic origin. What does it say about the mitzvah of Hanukkah? Our sages taught the time for the mitzvah of the Hanukkah lights begins when the sun sets, mishatishka hachama, and the time extends until people are no longer found in the marketplace, specifically until the Tarmudai, Tarmudai, the Tarmudai are no longer found in the marketplace. What are the Tarmudai? Merchants. These are, they're not even the merchants, they're actually the schleppers. These are like the collectors. They kind of collect the trash left over. It's not just the merchants. It's the people that are, somehow in every marketplace, there's always broken wood left over, from pallets or crates or something. Yeah, sure. These are the guys that are the wood collectors. They collect the scrips, the dribs and the drabs, scraps left over, and then they go and they sell them to
scavengers.
That's a better word. The scavengers. That's who it is. Until the scavengers are no longer found in the marketplace. That's when you know it's too late to light the Hanukkah candles. So the questions that we asked in the first couple sessions of the seminar were, first of all, the unusual timing of this mitzvah, which is after dark. All the rabbinical mitzvahs are instituted similar to the biblical mitzvahs. That's the rule in Torah. Called the tikkun rabbanon ke'ein deraisa takun. Any instruction or decree that the rabbis instituted was made in as similar a way as could be to their biblical injunction, which means, therefore, why are we lighting Hanukkah candles? This is a rabbinical mitzvah. Remember, there's 613 commandments in the Torah, plus 7 rabbinical mitzvahs, including Hanukkah and Purim, and the washing of the hands we just learned about, and Kiddush, and Havdalah, right, and Eruv. So, if the rabbis instituted this mitzvah, remember, this is the most recent Jewish holiday of all chronological time, because it happened even after the Purim story. It's only 2,200 years ago. The mitzvah was there to replace the Hanukkah lighting, or to continue to expand the Hanukkah lighting, the menorah lighting in the temple. In the Holy Temple, remember, if you walked into the Holy Temple, you first would enter into the courtyard of the women, as Noshim, as it's called, with its 4... what do they call them? 4 quadrants. Each quadrant had a different purpose. Then you'd walk into the Ezras Yisrael, up these stairs, the Nicanor gate. You'd walk into the place of the men. Then there was the place where the Kohanim were allowed to go into, the priests and the Levites were allowed to go into. After that was the giant altar where they would offer the animal offerings. After that was this building. The building which had the Holy and the Holy of Holies. What was in the Holy? Behind the curtain, they had 3 items. There was the golden altar, upon which they would offer the incense. By the way, anybody would offer the incense on any given day would become wealthy. Sounds like a good deal. the Kohanim were the only ones allowed to offer that, so they would have raffles every day to see who was going to do it. You're only allowed to do it once in your life. It was like being a sandik. You know what a sandik is? When you hold the baby at a bris. It's known that whoever holds the baby at a sandik becomes wealthy. So we have these raffles, and that's why you only be sandik once in a family. You're only supposed to be sandik once for, like, you can't do it for the same brothers over. Then there's so there was the golden altar for the incense. Then there was the showbread, the table of showbread, and there was also the candelabra of the menorah. They would light it every single day. They would light it. Behind that was the Holy of Holies, with another curtain with the Ark of the Covenant, in which were the broken tablets and the full tablets. There was also the staff of Aaron in there. There was the pitcher of manna. There was a Torah scroll in there. That was it, right? So now one of the main items of the Holy Temple was the menorah, which was defiled, violated, contaminated by the invading Greek armies. By the way, how do you say invaders in Hebrew? The Hebrew word for invaders is Palestinian. This is true. Absolutely true. The Hebrew word for invader is Palestinian. Polesh. A person who's Polesh is an invader. Palishtim are the invaders. Palestinim is invaders. This is the definition of the word. So when someone tells you that the Jewish people are occupying Palestinian land, the irony is deafening, right? It's saying that the Jewish people are occupying Judea, which is the rightful land of the invaders. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. But that's exactly what we're saying. We need to get this truth out.
Why isn't this out to the world?
You know, I'm going to make a video. I'll make a video about it. I'll work on it. Marty, I'll make a video. You spread it. I'll make you a deal. I'll make the video. You share it with your... Very good. Okay, Keith, you get it to her, right? Good. So back to the story. How did I get onto invaders anyways? I took an exit there. I don't remember which exit.
It was the menorah. Back to the Greeks.
Oh, the invading Greeks. Thank you. The invading Greek armies. What did they do? That was just like a little current affairs in the middle of a Hanukkah story. That's right. We understand each other, right? So good morning to all of our friends online. Corey. Oh, Leah Bronstein. Now, Leah Bronstein studies with us almost every single day. She's in Brooklyn, New York. And when I was there this week with Mike and with Keith at the Rabbis Convention, of all the thousands of people in Crown Heights in Brooklyn, Leah comes over to us and she says, "Are you Rabbi Wegler?" Leah, it's a pleasure to study you. Yeah, appreciate it. Leah, it's an honor to study with you. What a providential meeting. And to all of our friends from Quebec, Canada, and Francine from Canada. Wake up, Ottawa. Wonderful. Great. Okay.
Big problems.
Yeah, we're going to fix this Canadian anti-Semitism. I don't know what's going on over there. All right, guys. So back to business over here. Back to the menorah. The menorah, after the Greek invaders, after the Greek Palestinians invaded into the temple and they violated the menorah. Then what did they do? Remember, they did not destroy the temple. They could have destroyed the temple. They could have done what the Babylonians did before them, which was to burn the temple down to the ground. They had access, they had the keys, they were inside. They could have done what the Romans did later, which was to burn the second temple to the ground. They could have done another Tisha B'Av. But instead, they had an entirely different agenda. The Greeks had a different agenda. The Greeks were not brutes. Is that the word brutes?
They were philosophers.
They were philosophers. And what's more dangerous? Somebody who's trying to kill you or somebody who's trying to seduce you? Seduce is far more dangerous. If they kill you, at least you have your principles, But if they seduce you, you got nothing. Right? You got nothing left. They've stripped you of your dignity. They've stripped you of your identity. Right? And that is what the Greeks were trying to do. This was not a war against Jews. This was a war against Judaism. Right? The war was not against the Jews. They had no problem with Jews. The war was against Judaism. So now the question is, if they violated the menorah by contaminating the temple. Oh, Bay City, Michigan. Welcome, Tinker. Nice. So if they violated the temple by violating the oil, and the rabbis wanted to reverse that process by lighting the lights of the menorah in everybody's home, you'd think they would do it in the same way. And just like the menorah was lit an hour and a quarter before sunset in the broad daylight, so too the Hanukkah lights also should be lit in the broad daylight. Instead, we just learned that the Mishnah teaches us the mitzvah begins after sunset. So why is the menorah lights in the dark, whereas why is the Hanukkah lights in the dark, whereas the menorah lights that they come to commemorate are lit in the daytime? The second question we asked, I'm just going to leave it there. I'm going to review quickly by saying that the answer that the Rebbe gave us, because we're learning a mimer of the Rebbe right now, we're learning a discourse of the Lubavitcher Rebbe delivered in 1977, Hanukkah, very end of 1977. And the Rebbe gives us a paradigm shift with regards to Hanukkah. The Rebbe shifts the entire context of Hanukkah. He says, look, Hanukkah is not just about a cute family gathering in the dead of winter. Hanukkah is illuminating the darkness. Which darkness? The darkness of assimilation. It's not just the darkness of a cold winter night. It's the darkness of the lack of Jewish identity. It's the darkness of a Jew who's marching in a pro-Hamas parade. It's the darkness of a Jew who doesn't have the courage of his convictions to identify as a Jew, who feels that he needs to hide his Jewish identity so as not to provoke the Gentiles. This is the Jew that doesn't realize that Gentiles have no respect for Jews who don't respect themselves. And Gentiles have every respect for Jews who do respect themselves. Like Michael likes to say, this America is not a melting pot. It's more of a chopped salad, tossed salad, right? We're a tossed salad, right? We're not all the same. Men and women are not the same. Republicans and Democrats are not the same, right? We're different, and it's okay to be different. We can just coexist, right? You don't have to be the same as everybody else. I think that's the mistake that we're making, that boys are girls and girls are boys. I mean, who knows where this is going to, right? But if you say, look, I'm a boy, you're a girl, and it's okay. We can respect each other. And there's nothing wrong with having different opinions. Today I'm going to give a class on the art of disagreeing. And we're going to talk about how disagreements are not in any which way a conflict or another representation of the erosion of your relationship. The fact that you disagree means that you're human. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with your relationship. Right? In exactly the same way as we have different faces, says the Mishnah, we have different opinions. That's how it works. Exactly the same way we have different faces, the Mishnah says, that's how we have different opinions. The Mishnah says that human ideas are exactly the same as faces. How would you feel if everybody in the world had exactly the same face as you? If everybody looked identical to your clone, that'd be very weird, right? Why would you want to live in a world where everybody agrees with you? It's not how God created this world. God created the world in a way where we're supposed to be different, right? How did I get into that? I'm talking about disagreements. I'm talking about arguments. I'm talking about different opinions. I'm talking about identity. I'm talking about having differences, right? Salad bowl versus a melting pot, right? So the salad bowl is such. We're talking about the darkness of exile. We're talking about the darkness that we're illuminating on Hanukkah with the mitzvahs of the Hanukkah lights. We're acknowledging our deficiency on Hanukkah. We're acknowledging our struggle to manifest Jewish pride. We're acknowledging our cognitive dissonance, which manifests in the convictions that we carry within our hearts versus the lives that we choose to live on the outside. We recognize that there's a difference here.
So that's why we light candles at night instead of...
Yes, but we light the candles at night because the nighttime represents that spiritual darkness. That's exactly the point. So how do you deal with the darkness? What are you going to do about it? The answer is do a mitzvah. Each individual act of a mitzvah is like a blinding nuclear reaction that releases so much light you can't even imagine. We learned this morning in Ayom Yom that when you give charity to a poor person before davening, before prayer, the Rebbe Marash said it gives so much life to the poor person, and he said it gives so much life. He lifted up his hands to you in reciprocity, right? More than you could even imagine. When you do a mitzvah, it's like a resurrection of the dead. So even if you don't feel for the mitzvah, even if you don't understand the mitzvah, even if you have no idea what you're doing, you're just eating the matzah, you don't understand why, but you're eating it at the right time. Remember, many people do the Seder before dark on Passover afternoon or eve of Passover. You got to wait until nightfall to eat the matzah, right? So if you're going to eat the matzah before nightfall, you've done nothing. You could have eaten Parmesan cheese for the same price. But if you wait until after nightfall and you do the mitzvah and it's the right time, then that releases a blinding spiritual energy, which illuminates the darkness in ways that we cannot even explain. The way I want to try to explain that, it's as follows. I want to say that what happens when you're doing a mitzvah? When you do a mitzvah, the word mitzvah means connection, right? The word mitzvah means connection, like a team in Hebrew. In Hebrew, a team is a tzevet, right? Is a tzevet is a team, same root as the word mitzvah. So when you do a mitzvah, you are connecting yourself with God. Now, since you are mortal and God is immortal, since you are finite and God is infinite, what do you think is going to happen when you plug your cell phone into infinite energy? What's going to happen to your cell phone? It's going to be charged with infinite energy. Now, the vessel might not be able to contain that, and your cell phone might blow, but our souls are able to contain that. You know why? Because our souls are infinite. Our souls are a piece of God. So when you take our cell phone, our souls, and you plug them into God, you've just put the correct charging port on your soul, right? So imagine you filling up your car with all the wrong gas always. Imagine your car needs a certain kind of gas and you're using the wrong gas. And it still runs, but it's not running so well. And then one day you're putting in the right gas. Now it goes, right? So same thing with our souls. Our souls are a piece of God infinity. They're waiting for a recharge. You're spending your whole life running around trying to give your soul nutrition through country clubs, another round of golf, through another cruise, another vacation, right? Another hobby. And it's not the vitality that the soul needs. And then one day you do a mitzvah. You lay tefillin, some rabbi bumps into you on the golf course, and you lay tefillin, and suddenly you just plug your soul into the proper charger, and you've infused holiness and power and energy, vitality, proper vitality into your soul. So now you're alive. And that's how I want to try to explain how this works when it comes to doing a mitzvah in the midst of the darkness. When you're living in a dark world, when you're living in your own dark environment, which is a world of confusion, a world of conflicted values, a world, the beautiful story in the Gemara about Rabbi Levi. I think his name was Rabbi Levi. He died. He had an NDE in the Talmud. This guy had an NDE. He died, near-death experience. And then, he came back. You've heard of these stories, NDEs, right? So he comes back. His father said, Shalom Aleichem. What did you see up there? What did you see? And the way he described it in the Talmud is very interesting. He says, I saw I saw an upside-down world. Those people that are honored in this world are disrespected there. And those people that are disrespected here are honored in that world, upside down, topsy-turvy, right? Here we honor the politicians as if they're like some God gift to mankind. Who cares about them? Up in heaven, they're nothing, right? Down in this world, so the school teacher, the melamed, the guy teaching Aleph Beis to the kids, the simple carpenter who's devoted in his commitment, devoted in his faith. Nobody pays him any attention, but in heaven, right? So this is the upside down world in which we're living in, right? This is the upside down world that we're living in. And it's this paradigm shift that the Rebbe introduces us to when he tells us the purpose of the Hanukkah lights in the darkness is in order to illuminate the darkness of the exile. And now we're going to go further to understand the limits. Well, the Rebbe continues by saying that this, okay, you don't have the book. So the reason why the Hanukkah lights are lit after sunset is that they can illuminate the darkness of the exile. Okay. Parenthetically, the Rebbe points out that in addition to illuminating the darkness of the exile after the destruction of the temple, which is what we do today, the menorah lights of the Hanukkah also illuminated the darkness of the exile at the time of the miracle of Hanukkah. There was an exile. There was a dark exile even during the time of the miracle of Hanukkah. What was that darkness? Can anybody tell me?
Well, we had a bunch of Jews that were trying to be Greek. The Greeks were converted.
It wasn't, Harvey. It wasn't only a bunch of Jews who were trying to be Greek. It was the overwhelming majority of Jews that were trying to be Greek. How similar is that to the world we live in today? How many Jews in America would rather be American than Jews? How many Jews today do you know?
How about the guy who announced it on TV when he got the Oscar?
That's right. The guy who announced it. Exactly. I stand here accepting this award. I forget his name. Who cares, right? I forget it. He says, I here accept this award more as a renouncing my Jewish identity. Right? You finally got an award, you 3% of the population. You couldn't stand for your own people. You had to throw your people under the bus. At best, schweig.
Right.
Schweig means just close your mouth. Not every ridiculous thought that comes to your mind you actually have to say. But here, this guy he's trying to draw the endearment of his Gentile friends, right? So what does he do? He throws his mother under the bus while he gets the award. Do you think that earns the respect of the Gentiles?
Absolutely not.
You know, one of our members was a big businessman, still is, and he was on the way to a conference that conflicted with Pesach, and he had a problem with food. It was like in the middle of nowhere, there was no food, and there was Yontiv, and he was very conflicted. He was on his rise and his spiritual observance, and he wasn't sure what to do. You know, should he say something? Should he not say something? Are they going to think he's weird? Are they going to think he's just too like a religious fanatic or not? So what he did is that he went to the Rebbe, went to the Ohel, to the Rebbe's graveside. Now, if you've been to the Rebbe's graveside, there's a video screen over there. So as he walks into the reception area, he sees the video screen. The Rebbe says, and if you're a businessman, it's a video. If you're true story, and if you're a businessman and you have the courage to tell your colleagues, your business associates about your Jewish values, they will respect you more, not less. They will trust you in business because you stick to your values. But if you don't stick to your values and you don't have the courage of your convictions, then they actually won't respect you because they'll be like, how can I trust this guy with a large amount of money if he doesn't even respect himself? And the guy was blown. He was like, whoa. He had to come to New York to hear this message just as he walked into the oil reception room, right? He comes here every Shabbos. So we were talking about the guy accepting the award and how this Jew accepts the award. And at the same time, he feels that deems it necessary to show the non-Jews how goyish he is. Mm-hmm. You know, such Jews with such friends, who needs enemies, right? So this is the exile that we're talking about. The purpose of the Hanukkah lights is not only to illuminate the darkness of today after the destruction of the temple, but even then, the darkness that was at the time of the destruction, before the destruction of the temple, when the Greeks were assimilating Jewish culture very successfully. They were doing a very fine job, and it was miraculous that the Maccabees were able to rise up in revolution against them to drive them out of the land. So the Rebbe points out that the purpose of the Hanukkah lights is not only for after the destruction of the temple, but even for a state of paradox, a state of when you have spiritual illumination, you got the temple, but you still can't get it together. And I think that's a very important message for all of us. It's one thing for us to talk about the Jews that don't have a clue up from down. Right? We know such Jews, right? We know Jews that will publicly march against Israel with their Jewish heart. They'll vote that Iran needs to have a nuclear bomb because Nebuch, poor Iran, right? With their Jewish heart, these politicians, they vote in favor of a nuclear Iran. Forget those Jews. What the Rebbe is saying is, what about us? Here we are, and we're, if you're sitting around this table, and if you're with us here, salutations from Normandy, France. Thank you so much, Rebecca. I talk about my religious values. If someone asks me, and I'm not shy about it, good for you, Linda. Well said. I'm very happy to hear that. That's awesome, and that's certainly one of my intentions is to fill you up with courage and conviction in any which way that I can. But what was I saying? If you look at us, and we might be spiritually enlightened. If you're sitting around this table, you're watching this YouTube, then obviously you're making time, you're making space for your spirituality. And if that's what you're doing, you might still have conflict in your life. There might be parts of your life that you're really struggling with. There might be parts of your life that is a millionaire. I come to show every day or once a week, and I'm lighting the candles and I'm doing the tefillin. But you know what? When it comes to lashon hara, to slander, I'm an F-, right? Or when it comes to other sections of Jewish law, maybe when it comes to kosher, I might be not even trying. Tefillin, I'm doing great. But Shabbos, I don't even know what that is, right? So what the Maimer is pointing out to us is spiritual darkness is it's not binary. It's not light or dark, day or night. There's a lot of twilight here, a lot of gray area, right? We all have darkness within our illuminations. I mean, think of a marriage. You can have a wonderful relationship with your spouse, but then you have certain triggers where you behave like a Vilda Chaya. And you're like, what just happened? And you feel like there's a beast inside of you that just needs to be tranquilized. Like, what on earth is going on, right? And then you come out and you apologize to your spouse, hopefully, for that, whatever just happened. because we're complex human beings. As modern psychology helps us understand, there's something called IFS, internal family systems, where there's a crowd inside of you. Like Tanya taught this to us, in the late 18th century. Tanya taught us that we're not black or white. We're not good or bad. We're a spectrum of all of the above at the same time, right? There's parts of me that are conscious, and there's parts of me that are totally unconscious. There's parts of me aware, part of me that is unaware, part of me that's a beauty, and part of me that's just a beast. And that's what makes me human. We need the Hanukkah lights in order to turn on the lights in every room of our house. I might have the basement, which is the place that I'd rather not go, right? In my spiritual house. There's rooms in my house which I'm very proud of, the living room, the dining room, but I never bring guests into my basement because you don't want to know what's in there, right? So the Hanukkah lights in the darkness is in order to illuminate the darkness even in that part of my house. Even in the part of myself that is still grappling with darkness amidst the light, the consciousness that I'm fully aware of. And that's what I understand that I was saying over here. Where the Rebbe points out that in addition to illuminating the darkness of the exile after the destruction of the temple, it also illuminated the darkness of exile at the time of the miracle of Hanukkah, even though it was during the time of the second temple. Now the Rebbe elaborates. He says like this: the era was also referred to as exile. That era was also exile, even though it was during the second temple. During the second temple, there were miracles that were abounding at all times. There was, the miracle of being able to stand crowded at the pilgrimage festival and still to be able to bow down spaciously. We're in 770. You can relate to this. We can relate to this. Go there for Yom Kippur, you'll see. Everybody stands like sardines. But when it comes to time to bow, miraculously, I cannot explain this, there's space for everyone to bow down. Seriously, it's an amazing, amazing thing. So I was in 770 this past Friday night, and I saw suddenly the crowd started like falling. I'm like, oh my God, is somebody fainting? Like, what's going on? Because I was high up. So the crowd was falling, and I realized they were getting ready for the Amidah. So they're taking 3 steps backwards as a collective. There was like 500 people taking 3 steps backwards and then 3 steps forward. So I'm like, oh, they're not falling. They're just getting ready for the Amidah, right? And you got to go with the flow, because if you don't, you're going to get crushed, right? So there were miracles going on in the temple at all times. There was a column of fire, of smoke above the altar that never was blown in the wind. You couldn't tell the direction of the wind above the temple because it was always a straight up column. It was a miracle, right? There were no flies in the temple, right? There was never a problem with a place to sleep. Think about this, right? Accommodations, there's always an Airbnb available. So during the time of the temple, there was miracles abounding, yet it was still considered exile due to the effect that the Greeks were having on the Jewish people then, particularly just before the miracle of Hanukkah, when the darkness and suffering increased, as we mentioned in the prayer of Al-Anissim, which is added during Hanukkah. And I think we mentioned it in the previous class. I just want to say that the name for Greeks in Hebrew is Yavan. The name for Greeks in Hebrew is 3 interesting Hebrew letters: the Yud, Vav, and the final Nun. Yavan. Yavan is the Yud is a short little tiny letter. It's like a dot. The Vav is a longer letter, full line. And then the final Nun goes all the way down to below the line. So it's like, it looks like a descending continuum. And Chassidus explains that the meaning of that was, yes, there was always a bed to sleep on in the temple area. Ragnar, are you in India? Yeah, sounds like an Indian name. We'd love to hear your location. So the meaning of that, Chassidus explains, is that the Greeks with their Norway. Okay, good. Sounds good. Welcome. So the purpose of this Hebrew word is to show us that the Greek mindset infiltrated into the core of our being. You know how social media companies today, how do they become addictive? How do you create a company that's addictive? How do you do that? Imagine you could create a product that becomes addictive to mankind. You'd make a lot of money, right? So what do social media companies do? They have psychologists, they have social psychologists that study dopamine and that study what makes us feel good. It's deep brainstem pleasures that, every time there's a like on your screen, every time there's a little heart, every time you get a text message, that's sort of like your heart like kind of has a little flutter. It feels good. They keep on doing that, but when you have when you on these social media apps, when you get a like or a share or whatever they do there, it makes you feel good, right? So it's deep brainstem psychology that keeps us addicted, and it makes you keep on watching the YouTube shorts. They want you to keep on watching because it's just short enough so you can't lose your attention span, and then it's going to automatic roll into the next video. They get you hooked, right? In the same way, the Greeks are doing the same thing. Through their being philosophers, and in their subtlety, they were able to infiltrate deeper and deeper and even deeper into our mindset, into our values, into our consciousness in a way that even we weren't realizing. I just want to give you a very practical example of this. It's the way that the Yetzer Hara works. What's the Yetzer Hara? The evil inclination. We have two souls, right? Tanya teaches about two souls, IFS, right? You got your godly soul, you got your animal soul. They're both working full time. The evil inclination, the good inclination. This one's selfish. This one's mission oriented. And what are they doing? They're trying to get you to fulfill their agenda. And how does it work? So the godly soul, the mission oriented godly soul, is trying to get you to do the right thing. But then the animal soul wants you to behave like an animal. How does he do that? How do you convince? Seduces you. So now one way of doing so is seducing, but you can't always seduce a person because, some people are just like good people. They're just good people. So it's hard. You can't just seduce them and say like, why don't you eat the bacon? Why don't you eat the bacon? And you'd be like, slowly. So they do it slowly. So this is what the Mishnah says. The Mishnah says like this. Today tells him this. And tomorrow he tells him that. Until eventually he tells them to go and worship idols. Now that's a little difficult to understand. Today he tells you this, tomorrow he tells you that, and that, until eventually he tells you to go worship idols. How does that make sense? So you got a guy, like a rabbi, right? Let's say a rabbi, and he tells them today this, tomorrow that, and next thing the third day is worshiping idols. They're like, what's going on over here?
It's confusing.
So Chassidus explains it's even more straightforward than confusion. It's even more straightforward. Kach is a language of approval. This, in other words, you're doing a mitzvah, you're laying tefillin, you got out of bed this morning in a cold winter's morning to come to shul. So the evil inclination comes over to you and says, good job, Chuck. That's really nice. Kach, well done. This is good. And you're like, oh, I guess I could trust this guy, right? Next day, a poor man asks you for charity and you peel out a $100 bill and you give it to him and he says, Chuck, very good. And now he's reinforcing, he's your friend, right? So you feel like you can trust the guy. And then third day he says, this new trusted friend of yours, he says, I'm going to take you out for dinner tonight. I got a special surprise for you, right? And I can trust this guy. And now your guards are down, you're toast, right? So this is how the evil inclination works with us. That it subtly buys that confidence. What are you saying? Layers of confidence, of trust, until you've totally lost track. And that's what this Yavan is. They start off with a little bit, just a little bit. I want you to come and learn with me because I want to hear your wisdom, wise teachings from your Torah. Share with me the wise teachings of your Torah. And you're like, oh, sounds good. They want me to lecture at the local university. Sounds good. The next day they say, now I want your son to come and lecture. Young 15-year-old rabbi's son to come and lecture in the university. Like, oh, okay, this is good, right? It's a little further down, right? The third day, now they want your son to sit in on a lecture about philosophy, about Greek mythology, and now you're like, what just happened?
Like, right? What's behind it all?
Exactly. So this is the subtle approach.
Behind it all.
Now, I want you to realize that this is what? That's what the evil inclination does. Remember, he's oriented by selfishness. The evil inclination is oriented by selfishness, never by mission, never by purpose. So if the evil inclination is always going to stroke your ego, and you always got to be careful about why it feels good. Why is this feeling good, right? Is it furthering my purpose, or is it furthering my ego? So I just want to point out that we live in a world today where we have two kinds of anti-Semitism. There's jihadist anti-Semitism, the ISIS brand. ISIS is rising up again. Yeah. That's what's going on in Syria. You got like Hamas versus ISIS killing each other in Syria. And you're like, which one are we supporting? I told you, when I watch soccer matches with my kids, what's it called, World Cup soccer, we always ask ourselves, okay, so who's the lesser anti-Semites that we're going to be supporting? Right? Morocco versus Argentina, or we're going to figure Brazil versus Russia. Okay, so who's who's less of an enemy for us, and we figure out what to do. But here you got ISIS is rising up, right? So we got this ISIS brand or Hamas brand of anti-Semitism trying to kill us, and then you got a different kind of anti-Semitism. That's the assimilation kind of anti-Semitism, which is not trying to have you kiss the proverbial cross. Sorry, they're not having you kiss the sword. They want you to kiss the cross. Okay, today we're not dealing with Christian anti-Semitism, really, because Christians are actually, they've actually gotten over it. They're not killing us anymore, thank God. But what we are talking about, why would there be a problem to be called a Ragnar? Why would there be a problem with that name? I don't think that's a problem. Ragnar. I think it's a cool name. Just sounds ethnic. I wasn't sure which ethnicity it was. No, Haragnar. I don't know why that would be a problem. Anyways, so we live today in a world where there's two kinds of anti-Semitism. So there's those that are trying to kill us, and you know who the enemy is. But then there are those that are trying to assimilate us, and you don't know who the enemy is. Come to our universities. Come to our colleges. Let our professors teach your children what could be better. Well, what could be better? Right? I was going to say worse, and it came out wetter. Right? Worse, better. Right? What could be wetter? Right?
It's a mellow prep.
Think about that. What's a mellow prep?
It's exactly what happened.
Really? It's like my mind clashing with my mouth. Interesting. Okay, good. So what's happening here is we can't tell the difference between good and bad, right and wrong when it comes to assimilation. Because we think they're our friends. They just want to take us out for dinner. They just want to help us get accepted into the University of Montreal. I mean, isn't that a great place for Jewish people to go to the University of Montreal? Chabad Rabbi Montreal was sitting with me on Sunday.
A lot of smoke and mirrors.
And he tells me, he says, yeah, I asked him, how's life? He says, other than the fact that I was almost killed by 85,000 pro-Hamas protesters on Friday night, while the prime minister was at a Taylor Swift concert, yeah, life is good. So imagine that. We're living in a world where there's two kinds of enemies. There's the Esau's that are trying to kill us, but then there's these assimilationists that are just trying to assimilate us, and that's the Hanukkah story, which is absolutely ongoing. And now we can begin to understand the end of the instruction of the Mishnah when it says, now that we understand the foundational understanding of the purpose of the mitzvah of the Hanukkah lights, it gives us insight into when the mitzvah ends. The mitzvah goes until when? Until the scavengers leave the marketplace, right? Literally until the feet are gone from the market.
Candles don't have to
There's
stay
two
lit all the
versions.
time, do they?
The Talmud uses two versions. No, the candles don't need to last that long.
Right.
Your candles need to burn for just a certain amount of time. 50 minutes. I think that's on a Friday afternoon. Otherwise, it's 30 minutes. I think I got to look it up again. But there's two versions. One is there's two ways to read it: until the feet are gone from the market, or until the feet of the scavengers are gone or destroyed. Here's the deeper meaning. The word tarmudai, which you translated as scavengers, is the same letters in Hebrew as moredet. Tarmudai is the same letters. You can rearrange the letters to read moredet, which means rebellion. Moredet, like mored is a rebel. Moredet is a rebel, which means one who rebels. Accordingly, this refers to the one who rebels against God's kingship, representing the ultimate expression of the darkness of exile. So now we're getting insight into what it means until the scavengers are no longer in the market. You have to light those candles. Let them burn. Yes. Let them burn until there are no more rebels in your internal marketplace. Chassidus, the previous Rebbe tells us that when you light the candles, you have to sit next to the candles. You're not allowed to work. You're not allowed to do labor while the candles are lighting, certainly not the woman. And you have to listen to the stories that the candles tell us. This is the story that the candles are telling us. The candles are telling us to find the courage to be who we truly are, to find the light and to shine it into the darkest spaces of our lives. That even in those parts of our lives that are so dark, not only because of the lack of spiritual observance, but parts of our lives that are dark because of traumatic experiences, which many times happened in our earliest childhood. When we look at a part of our life where we encounter a parent that was just nasty or callous, when we encounter a part of our lives where we were taken advantage of by somebody who should have protected us, And there's a part of our lives that's so dark, we never want to go there. We never have the courage. And that's why we get triggered, by the way, because when someone says something or does something which reminds us of our earliest trauma, we regress and we react like the 6-year-old or the 12-year-old who we were at the time of that trauma. And we fight back, we lash out. And our spouse is like, what just happened? And they don't realize that there's an undercurrent. There's another story going on at play. It's a subconscious story that only you are experiencing on a somatic level. Whilst even though it's not actually conscious, you're not even aware of it necessarily unless you have a good therapist that's able to guide you. It's those darknesses that we're trying to illuminate. It's the awareness that every experience in our lives is by divine design. It's the awareness that even our darkest spaces are our mission in this world. And that we must find the strength and the courage to carry our light even to those spaces. So if you find yourself struggling with addiction of any kind, you have to ask yourself, why am I struggling with that addiction? What am I anesthetizing? What am I covering up? What trauma? What challenge? And it's all sorts of addictions. It doesn't have to be substance addiction. It could be experience addiction, it could be people addiction, it could be cell phone addiction, it could be any kind of addiction. The purpose of the Hanukkah lights is to light up that darkness. This is deeply personal. This is so much more than a historical experience. It's a courageous descent into a private audience with yourself. Many of us spend our lives running away from ourselves. Think of the codependent who will do anything to distract himself, to please other people, as long as he doesn't have to face himself. But the Hanukkah lights is when you're supposed to sit all by yourself with the candles and take that light to illuminate your darkness until no part of your life is inconsistent with your mission, until every part of your life is aligned, balanced, and illuminated with purpose, until there's no more rebels in the darkness of the market. Comments coming in. I'm a Christian and I have to read from the Torah every day. It's holy to use, but I understand it's better from Jewish. Okay, good. Ra is evil and you need to read Ra. I don't see the evil, Ragnar. I don't see the evil in your name, man. I see a fellow human being, Ragnar. I don't judge you by your name. I wouldn't take it personally. I would encourage you to identify your God-given purpose. But tell us where you're from. One more comment coming in. For God so loved. Oh boy. Another one of those. Okay. After all the religions, when you ask their people, why are you doing this? They said our holy book commanded us. Even if it's not good, Muslim, Christian, all. Why is it not allowed to Jewish the same thing? I don't understand your question, man. Sorry, apologize. Ontario, Canada. Thank you, Carol. I'm here to hear. Blessings, dudes. Sounds good to me. All right, guys. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day. Shalom.
So how come, it's an election that they